Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. I see people are flowing in the room. Welcome to this webinar. My name is Valentina Bacchi and I work at Photo Consortium, the international consortium for the promotion of photographic heritage. And we also happen to be coordinator of this project, Eureka 3D. And the Eureka 3D project is organizing this webinar together with ICA, the International Council on Archive. So you are very welcome. I will start with a very short introduction about, let's say, this project and what we do. And then I will leave the floor to our keynote speaker, Professor Touradj Ebrahimi. So I'm sharing my screen. Yes, I hope you can see it well. Okay. So, as I said, this is a webinar series that we co-organized between this project and the ICA. And it is a series that started already 1 year ago. We had the first 3 events in fall 2023, and the recordings are available. And now this is the second edition, and it is the third webinar of our second series. The scope of these events is really to look at this very big scenario of change, the digital transformation of our cultural heritage sector, and particularly with a focus on building capacities and helping cultural heritage and archival professionals to learn about what is happening and what are the challenges, particularly about 3D, but not only. And we do this with these very candid and informal discussions where we share good practices, knowledge, showcase resources and tools, and trying to really understand what is the scenario. Now, you are very welcome to use the chat for greetings and other information, but if you want to ask questions to our keynote speaker, please use the question and answer function that is at the very bottom of your screen. After the talk, we will read the questions and our speaker will reply. So I said that this is the third event of 2024 series. We already had 2 webinars, one in September on digital media authenticity, and the second in October on the occasion of the celebration for the World Day of Audiovisual Heritage, and this was focused exactly on audiovisual heritage. So you can check the Eureka 3D website to find more information, the recordings, and also the ICA channels show all the outcomes for these 2 events. Today we are in our third event, and we will look at the format for digital archival and long-term preservation. I said that this webinar is organized by this Eureka 3D project. It is a project funded by the European Commission under the Digital Europe program, and it is a project that is ending because we have in our final month, the project will conclude at the end of the year, and we are super happy because it was a very successful project. It lasted 2 years, and the main outcome, let's say, was to implement a data cloud and services in the data space for cultural heritage. So the outstanding outcome for Eureka 3D is the Data Hub. It is a cloud-based suite of services and tools to store, preserve, manage, and share data, metadata, and paradata generated in 3D digitization projects. So it is really a tool for cultural heritage institutions who are initiating this journey in 3D digitization and who really need to handle these files and to make them available to a variety of users and stakeholders. The project is supporting the data space for cultural heritage. As you may know, this is an initiative from the European Union that builds upon the existing platform of Europeana. Europeana is the flagship initiative to showcase digital cultural collections of European heritage. And indeed, this data hub that we created allows to have a sort of direct entry gate to the data space for cultural heritage. And then we did also other things in this project. One is certainly capacity building, and this event today is part of that effort. And we are also sharing new contents in 3D in the data space for cultural heritage. I said that the project is coming to an end, but it is not fully true, because we are already heading to the continuation project that is Eureka 3D XR, which will start in February. So certainly our journey is just started. And indeed, as I said, Eureka 3D was really focused in implementing high quality 3D digitization. So you can find a lot of information, tools, guidelines, case studies in our website. And with the new project, which will start in February, we continue on that road, trying to understand what we do with these 3D digital collections of heritage. So how to use them in innovative reuse scenarios to create extended reality and more interactive applications to share these collections to the various users and stakeholders. And Eureka 3D XR is starting, as I said, in February. The consortium is more or less very similar, so a very strong group of well-established partners. And the scopes, as I said, are to transform cultural content, so not only 3D, but also archival content, 2D, video, text, maps, stories, into extended reality scenarios. And again, these will be shared in the common data space for cultural heritage. There will be various pilot cases, all of them very interesting, and certainly we will continue in the capacity building effort. Just a final information about Eureka 3D, which you may find interesting. We are hosting our final conference in Girona and online on the 13th December. So it will be a public conference showcasing the project outcomes and discussing all these important topics that we are addressing. And the registrations are open, so you are very welcome to check our website, our social media, and participate. And now I will pass the mic, let's say, to our keynote speaker, Touradj Ebrahimi. He is a professor at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Lausanne, and he also is a convener of the JPEG Standardization Committee, and is a very well-acknowledged researcher and professor. His research interests include still moving and 3D image processing and coding, visual information security, so rights protection, watermarking, authentication, data integrity, steganography, new media, and human-computer interfaces. I will now stop sharing my screen, and I pass the floor to Touradj. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Valentina. And I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully you can now see the screen.
Yes, we see the PowerPoint, so perhaps you can put in presentation.
Which one do you see?
Mode. We see the notes from...
okay, what about this one?
This is perfect, yes.
Okay. So, hello everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I see there are people from all around the world. It's a very, very great pleasure for me to be here and to spend maybe 35 minutes of time to tell you a little bit about some emerging JPEG formats that might be of interest to all of you, because you have an interest in digital archival and long-term preservation. I think one thing I do not need to introduce is the JPEG committee and the JPEG format. As you know, JPEG committee, which is the group of experts that came up with the format JPEG that now we call JPEG 1, released it in 1992, and Since then, for over 30 years, there has been a number of additional formats that have been added to them. I don't have time to go through all of them, but I have highlighted a few of them that I'm going to briefly introduce to you. I will do that in a little bit of in a teaser mode because we don't have much time. And I'm going to focus more on why and what these formats can do, but not how they do it. So if you have any interest, my last slide has my email address and my coordinates. If you want to know more, please don't hesitate to drop me an email or get involved with me. The first thing I want to say before going through these formats is an observation that I hope everybody agrees. If you take just still pictures, the number of photos that are taken every year is really tremendous. In fact, in 2024, which is going to end very soon, it is amounting, at least estimated, to be 1.7 trillion pictures taken. And this number is just going to increase. And out of these pictures that are taken, because not all of them are kept, sometimes people send them with WhatsApp, sometimes take a picture of, I don't know, some note or something, and then they throw it away. But out of this, the estimates have it that by 2026, we're going to have a 13.5 trillion pictures that will not only be recorded out of almost 2 trillion, but also will be kept. So we are talking about really huge amount of data, and the format in which this data is to be stored is very important because they have to preserve the changes of times and devices and technology and everything. And for the same reason, it's not very wise to store your pictures only in raw format of whatever camera manufacturer, sensor manufacturer offers you. It's very important that the formats that we use are really in such a way that 100 years from now, even longer than that, we still know and we still have tools that can decode them for us. And that's why JPEG is so important. Now, JPEG 2000, that some of you might know since it exists since now almost 25 years, had an extension of its format called High Throughput JPEG 2000. And basically what it offers is a faster version of JPEG 2000. JPEG 2000 didn't find its its role everywhere because sometimes people said it's too complex. So this JPEG 2000 high throughput is an extension, a variant of JPEG 2000 that is much faster. In fact, depending on the compression ratio that you use, it can be between 5 to almost 30 times faster than JPEG 2000. But of course, there is no such a thing as a free lunch. You also get a little bit of a decrease in the compression efficiency, but it's definitely in the order of single percentage, depending on the work that or the point, the compression ratios that you are working on. Now, why is it possible? In fact, it's possible simply because the arithmetic coding that was a very, very heavy duty component in the JPEG 2000 codecs have been replaced with an alternative. And this alternative basically does a similar work, but maybe not as efficient in terms of compression efficiency, but at much, much faster pace. And because arithmetic coding, entropy coding in general is lossless, it means you can even today take all the recorded JPEG 2000 for archival and transform them without any loss. So there will be numerically lossless transcoding from JPEG 2000 to to high throughput JPEG 2000. And that makes it much, much more interesting in terms of computational efficiency, energy, resources, etc. Now, JPEG 2000 and JPEG high throughput JPEG 2000 basically offer the same, just that one is trading a little bit differently the compromise between efficiency in terms of compression and the amount of resources required to do that. But in general, JPEG 2000 is, and I'm sure many of you are aware of this format, and it's really future-proof. You can not only compress in lossless or lossy version a lot of image content today and also video, but also in future. You can go up to dimensions that go to, beyond 4 trillion pixel in each direction. You can get tens of thousands of channels in terms of color space, and you can have precisions that can go up to 38 bit per pixel or per sample, which is amazing. And it's widely used, right? So many of the domains in which today JPEG 2000 is used have to do with archival. I don't need to go through all of them, but as you can see here, everything that is in red is one way or another, either directly or indirectly, have to do with archival. So JPEG 2000 is really a very, very good format, and now this high throughput JPEG 2000 even helps more. And in addition to be widely used, there is a lot of resources and a large body of implementation available in hardware, in software, open source, or commercial products. So I think this is something JPEG committee is very proud of, and by this extension, it is hoping that it is going to even extend the number of applications where it is used. But I'm going to now move to a very, very recent standard that we call JPEG XL. And the L of X doesn't mean extra large, but it means extension for long term. In fact, the goal of JPEG XL is to replace JPEG 1 after 35 years of loyal services. Now, this has been attempted many times, and it has failed. Even JPEG committee itself tried it several times. It didn't succeed. Others, large companies, tried to do that. They also failed. And one of the reasons is that because we already have, and you saw that, a huge amount of content that is already in JPEG. So it is not enough to just to be better than JPEG from performance or compression efficiency or resources, etc. You have to also show a path from how to migrate from JPEG 1 ecosystem into JPEG XL. And this is really what JPEG XL is about. In fact, I said I'm not going to show you anything about how things are done, but this is the only slide where I really think that it's worth mentioning that JPEG XL architecture is a mixture between a module that take care of lossless coding, a module that do a very good compression, lossy compression, but also it has modules that can recompress the good old JPEG. So if you already have JPEG 1 content and losslessly, numerically losslessly, turn them into this new format. And by the way, you can take from this new format and go back to JPEG also equally. So it really has a lot of benefits, probably beside the fact that it is compressing at least, or in average, about 50 times better than JPEG for the same quality, and also better than 30 to 50% better than PNG files, but also it is legacy friendly, meaning that you can losslessly compress, numerical losslessly, as I said, and get files that are 20% smaller. And there are a lot of other very, very interesting benefits that come from JPEG XL. Instead of going through this list, I'm going to show you just a little bit of some results that people have been doing. So here you see a chart, and on the chart you see a few well-known formats around, and JPEG is not in it because JPEG is not lossless, because this chart is just for lossless. Now, the more you go to the left horizontally, the smaller, so the better is the compression. And the more you go up, the faster, so the complexity is better. And if you look, in fact, JPEG XL is really beating absolutely everybody, because not only it provides smaller size files in lossless mode, but also does it really from the compression efficiency, from resource requirement, with much less resources, less power, less memory usage, and less computational complexity. For lossy, it also is the same. So it's the same here. The more you're on the left and on the towards the top, so the more you are in this area here in this curve, in this plane, the better it is. And you see again, JPEG XL for qualities that are web quality, and even qualities that are very high quality for photography, really is beating everybody else. Maybe this is one of the reasons that JPEG XL now being adopted very quickly, although it's just came out a few years ago, just 2-3 years ago, has been adopted by many. In fact, the Apple ecosystem has adopted it. So everything in Apple, all devices, all operating system are using it. In terms of capture, the latest iPhone 16, the Pro version also can capture in this format. But it's not only Apple. There are many other vendors, other players in the world of imaging that have started adopting it. Here, just you see a snapshot of how it looked like just a few months ago, and I'm sure that this number is going to get is going to grow faster and faster, and maybe this time the good old JPEG could be replaced by another format that offers better features for future imaging applications. Now, I want to talk about also some recent ones that are not completely finished. Actually, they are finished in terms of specification, but they are not yet published as standard. One is JPEG AI. JPEG AI uses actually artificial intelligence tools in order to do the compression. So this is something that, like many areas, is going to be affected by artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is in many areas of imaging showing very interesting results in terms of performance. Coding is one of them. So the scope of JPEG AI is just to create a stream that is very compact, but allows not only visualization by humans, but since now more and more machines are using images like self-driving cars, etc., also to be efficient for this kind, and if possible in a royalty-free basis, which is the goal of this activity. There are, again, in JPEG AI, many applications that are driving this standard, and some of them, like cloud storage and image collection storage, are directly related to archival. Some others maybe less, but some like video surveillance, well, they need, right, or media distribution. They are either related or require some storage as part of the type of things that should exist as features. A lot of requirements of JPEG AI are really application driven, around application that have been very present. So it's not necessarily a universal generic codec as I mentioned for JPEG XL here. High coding efficiency, especially for crowd storage and media distribution, has been a driver for the definition of the standard. Understanding of content, because many and increasing so imaging application require that you understand a little bit about the content, either to recognize what is in there or classify images or understand if it is moving images, what type of action or events are taking place. And this is probably the most important for archival, content consumed by humans in many applications can be improved before it is visualized. For example, you can reduce the noise, you can increase the resolution, you can correct the colors. But then you don't want to store the result of this processing, because as time goes, you can find better ways to do that. And you don't want to trick and create false content that would replace the original. And JPEG AI actually can do this work quite pretty nicely, because you can keep the content, and this chart maybe shows that very well. The content could be even noisy and everything, and you could even manage to have the content even with all its noise and defects, etc. But then you can, the same bit stream that is stored for archival purposes can be processed while being decoded to improve its resolution, reduce the noise, etc., or even to analyze its content. So this is one of the beauties of JPEG AI. It's just pretty new in codecs around. So you don't only have the possibility to decode as it is, and then you go and do something. While you are decoding, you can do things like increasing its resolution, reducing the noise, improve the color, etc. Now, JPEG AI is coming into two versions. One is the version that just decodes, and the other one, all these things that I told you, that does processing and computer vision tasks. And the one that is doing the processing, it's almost finished, as I said. It's going in January, actually, so just a couple of months from now, is going to be ready for use. And there are already a number of companies that have announced that they are going to adopt it. One thing I want to also add here is the issue of complexity. You know, complexity is sometimes something that you can get great technologies, but because they are too complex, people don't use that. So JPEG AI has been really looking at these aspects too, and has come up with really very interesting architectures that allows you to even take the same bit stream, and depending on how much complexity you have, get better or not as good in terms of quality results. So if you don't have much complexity, you get something, but it's the same bit stream. From the same bit stream, you get something that is reasonable in quality. But if you put more resources on it, you get better and better from the same bit stream. And this, you can do that at very reasonable complexity. In fact, there has been, by a number of companies, comparison between JPEG AI and even the good old JPEG, or some of the latest technologies coming from, for example, MPEG, that can be used also for intra-frame coding if you consider a video is just one frame. And in terms of complexity, actually, things are really amazingly good. At the same time, the quality is better. So here, one of those rare cases where artificial intelligence not only improves the quality, but at the same time is less complex, which is amazing results. And maybe last thing I want to say before moving to the next format is that JPEG AI, although I told you it's going to be available to the public since from January next year, already 18 months ago, July 2023, some companies, they showed that they can actually implement JPEG AI already in smartphones of those times, so 18 months ago. So now, of course, Now we are iPhone 16, but it was possible to run in real time on iPhone 14 Pro Max JPEG AI coded content at 8K at 60 frames per second, and same for other smartphones like Huawei. Of course, these, because of AI component in it, they use what is called NPU, neural processing unit. So it's not only CPU, but NPU of these mobile phones. But nowadays, almost all high-end mobile phones have an NPU, and so one can rely on them to really do a good job. Let me just tell you quickly, because this event is also organized by Eureka 3D, that exactly the same that I explained to you, use of AI and machine learning for image compression and efficient image compression that can not only give you better compression, but at the lower complexity, is also happening for immersive components. And that's in the framework of JPEG Plano, which is one of the standards of JPEG committee that deals with immersive content. And now by immersive content, JPEG understand light field or hologram or point clouds. And I want to just tell you for the hologram or for the point cloud, because the two others also are finished, but they are not learning based. So the JPEG Plano point cloud coding, actually, if you look at its scope, you will see it's very, very similar to the scope of JPEG AI. The main difference is that instead of using learning-based coding to code still images or moving images, you can use to compress 3D contents that are represented by point cloud. And the same idea that you can, of course, decode it and visualize it, but also process it and improve its quality, maybe patch parts that are need to be patched, or even understand the content through the 3D analysis of the content. These are all the same. The technology used behind JPEG Plano point cloud coding is actually a lot coming from JPEG AI itself, plus some things that have to be added, of course, to deal with this new type of content. And it offers a lot of flexibility beyond what I just told you about JPEG AI. So all of them, but also it can, in a flexible way, control how much you want to put quality on the color of the 3D versus the geometry, and how to leverage actually the fact that it is learning based to, for example, have super resolution version of some objects that might not have enough samples, or are lower of our lower sampling rates. JPEG Plano timeline, as you see here, is actually, most of it is finished, but the learning-based point cloud coding also is planned to become an international standard, so publicly available starting January next year. So just a couple of months from now. Let me finish by telling you a little bit about farther than next year. And this is JPEG DNA. Now, question is, why DNA suddenly? Well, because DNA, a lot of people who are active in this area have found that DNA is actually a very, very good medium for data storage. It has very, very good density. You can actually put extremely high volume of data in very, very tiny volumes of DNA. It's stable, thousands of years, and from energy point of view also, it's very eco-friendly because it doesn't require cooling as much as, and electricity as much as some other alternatives do. But so you need really, and a lot of people are looking at DNA as storage media. The only problem is that DNA is made of quaternary vocabularies. So molecules that make DNA are A, C, G, and T. So it's not like a bit where it can be 0 and 1, but it can be 0, 1, I don't know, A and B. So there are 4 basically possibilities. So it's a quaternary data. And there is another issue, and this is the fact that as opposed to binary data, you cannot just write and read molecules one after the other in any random order. And let me tell you a little bit. So it's really the problem of producing information coded as DNA is kind of constrained biologically. Now, what are these constraints? Synthesizers today are not capable of making very long oligos, typically up to 300. Nature can do thousands, tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands long. We cannot do that, at least at a reasonable cost. So this has to be done. So everything should be done taking that into account. Also, well, temperature and different rays, etc., can decay the DNA. So some DNA might disintegrate, and so which means that some part of the information that you might have stored on the DNA might disappear because the molecules they disintegrate, and you have to have ways to still recover them by putting redundancies and ways to recover them. And also sequencing, so reading the information that is in DNA has a number of issues, which means that sometimes you don't decode a molecule that is A as A. Sometimes you decode them differently, or you cannot decode them simply. So these are the type of constraint you have. Typically, it's very difficult to decode if you have what is called homopolymers, meaning sequences of the same molecule follow each other. In binary world, in electronic world, if you have 20 zeros that follow each other or 20 ones that follow each other in a bit stream, there is no problem. But in fact, there is a problem if there is more than 3 A's or 3 C's or 3 T or more than 3 G's that follow each other. It's very difficult to sequence them, and some patterns also are difficult to repeat, and also there should be a balance between CG and AT molecules, because otherwise it creates additional instability. So when you do decoding, not only you have to redesign codecs that can produce quaternary data, but they have to produce quaternary data taking into account these biological constraints. And that's really what JPEG DNA is doing, and the reason it is doing is that actually almost everything in terms of application and use cases behind it have to do with archival. Maybe traceability is the only one that is not. Now, what is the situation today with JPEG DNA? In fact, the work started quite a while ago, and in January 2023, so almost 2 years ago, there was a call that was issued, a first call, draft call, and then the final call was a little bit like a year and a half ago. In October last year, the calls were responded to. Some responses came. They were evaluated, and the first working draft of the JPEG DNA was created in already earlier this year, so about 6 months ago. And if all goes well, in January, again, a couple of months from now, there will be the first committee draft. Then there will be some iterations and some tests and etc. that has to be made. And if everything goes well, by 2026, so about a couple of years from now, we are hoping that there will be the first JPEG DNA coding standard available. Maybe by then also the technology of reading and writing information into DNA becomes cheap enough and fast enough so that then it can be used, this format can be used for the application that want to store images into DNA. That's all I have to say, and I hope that I think that I did not spend more time than I was told, but now the floor probably would be open to any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Touradj, for the super interesting and informative presentation. I seem to see that people are a bit shy in asking questions, but we have one that perhaps will, get the ball rolling, and others will feel like asking whatever they have in their mind. So the question that I see is, what key recommendations would you provide to professionals in the archiving community for selecting optimal file formats that balance long-term preservation needs with the requirements of online distribution?
Okay, I see that this is actually coming from a colleague from JPEG, Frederick. So
Yes.
thank you, Frederick. It's a very difficult question to answer, but let me first tell you a story and then give you the answer, okay? I forgot to tell Valentina to write in the bio that was she gave kindly in the beginning that I was involved in the archival of the Montreux Jazz Festival project. So, in fact, for those of you who like music, there is a festival in Switzerland since nowadays almost 60 years. And the founder, Claude Nobs, was a visionary, really, in 1967 when he started with this festival, and he really invited the cream of not only jazz but pop music and blues and everything you can imagine. He really recorded all of it, and he every time recorded them with the best technology available. But technology changes, right? So you could imagine in the first decade of the festival, the recording were all on magnetic tapes, and audio and video were on different type of technologies. And then later on, people moved to disc and different type of tapes, and then at some point it even become digital and still on tapes, and then at some point it became solid state, and today it's solid state. And the contents, of course, in the beginning they were black and white in 1967, then they became color, or different flavors of color. Then they became, in fact, I think that Montreux Jazz Festival was one of the first um, content beyond labs that was even recorded in HDTV with the Muse system. One of the first places the Japanese HDTV analog was recorded was Montreux Jazz Festival. So why am I telling this to you? It's because at some point it became clear that all this great testimony of the music in the last 60 years was in danger of disappearing because a lot of the tapes had a halftime of 20 years, 30 years, and some of them had even passed that halftime. So it wasn't even sure how you can even read the content. And so one thing that I was tasked to do was to look different technologies and different things that were done. Some of the tapes, even the machines weren't around. Some of the tapes, the machines were around, but the people who could operate them were either dead or brainless. They had Alzheimer or all sorts of diseases. They couldn't really help us anymore. So So really the main problem was, how can you digitize this content? How can you take them in as much fidelity as possible from the whatever format, analog format or electromagnetic or electro-optical or magno-optical format that they were using, out and turn them into binary. Now, then it became the question of, okay, now that we have them in digital, then what do we do? So of course, you always want the master to be the highest quality, so no loss, and that's what we did. And in fact, we used JPEG 2000 lossless for storing that. But then we had to create two different versions. One version that was perceptually lossy, and one version that was consumer lossy, let's say, where we could distribute. So the ones that were consumer lossy, of course, we used MPEG, because MPEG was a better solution to stream video. So these are archives where all video and audio. But then one thing that we discovered, and this is probably the end of my long answer, is that we discovered that a lot of the data has a lot of artifacts. So some of them, because the capture devices like the tube based cameras, they were creating all sorts of nasty effects. Audio sometimes was leaking into video, so you could sometimes see some patterns that people who are in the field are very aware of, and you need really to post process them, right? So you need to enhance them, remove all sorts of noise because of that. But then the question was, well, this is a lot of data. So we are all the Motor Jazz Festival now. It's about 4 petadata of petabytes of data. So 4 petabyte, you don't. It's not cheap. It's very expensive. So you cannot just duplicate several versions of these things. So one big question for us was, okay, how do we cope with this compromise between having several versions or one version? But if you have only the original uncompressed, then it's very, very hard to handle. So the distribution is very difficult. If you go and post-process and compress and all these things, it's going to create for you something that is better to distribute, but it's going to deteriorate the quality. And this is where, and we are now looking at two, let's say, breakthroughs in order to cope with this. One is JPEG AI. So JPEG AI is, as I said, can compress for you, but close to lossless, the content. But then every time you want to visualize it, you use the latest post-processing to denoise and to adapt it to the right resolution, etc. So your content doesn't change. It's always the same. It's when you are decoding it that you can update it. So that's one thing that we are doing. And the second thing that we are doing is that we are really seriously now considering to store everything, at least for the primary uncompressed content, in or losslessly compressed content in DNA. So my long answer to the short and easy question that was asked is that you really have to look what you want, because everything is a question of compromise. Of course, if you have unlimited resources, unlimited funds, unlimited time, well, you don't even need compression. You don't just put everything in raw. But we know that this is not feasible. So we have to find the right compromise. So some of these formats that I talked about are about these compromises. Now, not one size fit all, if the size of the archive is not huge, then maybe you don't need to store it on DNA. If you need, if it's not cold storage or for long-term preservation, maybe DNA is not right, even regardless of size. If you know that your content, you're not going to process it, maybe just JPEG XL would be the best. If you know that the content should be post-processed, denoised, increase in resolution, colored even, etc., maybe formats like JPEG AI can become very, very interesting for these kind of things without multiplying the number of the versions of the content you have, and at the same time always having the best technology to process it. I hope I answered to the question.
Yes, I think I also see some good feedback in the chat, and there are a few more questions. One is, yeah, again, a question that appears simple but may require a complex answer, because Alberto Longo asks how to manage and digitize heritage image with ISO guidelines.
Okay, so you're right that there are a number of standards for by ISO for archival. Unfortunately, I'm not familiar. Well, I know they exist, but I did not take those. I was not involved in defining them. I just know about them. What I can tell you, and I want to repeat that, I said it in the beginning, and I think it has its importance, is that following a standard way of creating an archive, digitizing an archive, designing the preservation process is far more secure than going and following a proprietary, maybe by some company, no matter how large they are. And the reason is because, well, we archive these things for future, right? But nobody can tell in future what happens to these companies. So I'm not saying some of these companies are going to necessarily disappear, but they change interest. They change, how many of you can decode Word, MS Word 3, right? Well, nobody. Microsoft's still around, stronger than ever. It's a $1 trillion company. They just don't find that it is worth keeping backward compatibility with something that is 10 years old. And well, there's nothing we can do, right? Except that if you are one of those who like to write code and write to keep all the operating systems alive and maybe do so. But following an ISO endorsed, and ISO is not the only one, but it's the one that I know best, so I recommend it. But maybe there are others too. Buys you this, buys you the fact that the chances that the process is going to get lost, that the devices and equipments and services that are around it are going to disappear are going to be less.
Thank you very much. There are a couple of more questions and also something in the chat. I will start from the questions in the question and answer box. So this is for the audience, it is at the bottom of your screen. You will find a place to add your questions. So Sabina Aneva asks, how will you deal with the copyright issues in artificial intelligence?
Wow, that's a very, very tough question. It's a very, very important question. You're absolutely right. But let me explain a little bit um, the AI that is used, the artificial intelligence that is used in JPEG AI versus the artificial intelligence that is used to generate content that people usually refer to as generative AI. Generative AI does learning using sometimes, and actually I'm sure always, in the cases I know, that might have copyright, right? Whether it is copyright of text because they generate text, or image, or audio, or video, it's second. That problem is a serious problem, and generative AI currently today in all the big companies that we know about, all these names that we know that are now worth hundreds of billions of dollars, or at least there has been billions of dollar investment in them. All of them are playing obscurity because it's not in their interest, right? So they say, yeah, we are using some data to train, but they don't say what data, etc. That's a serious issue. There are unfortunately there is nothing else that can be done than taking them to court, and some people have done that, and hopefully these courts are going to take the right decision, and this will be a persuasion for them or for others like them not to do it. But that's the problem with generative AI. The JPEG AI technology is what is called an autoencoder technology. It doesn't create content by relying on other content, if you understand what I mean. It's really an autoencoder, meaning that it's exactly like a JPEG 2000 or JPEG 1, where you give it an image and it compresses it. It's a different technology from the generative AI that is used in OpenAI or Midjourney, and there are quite a few of these where you give a prompt and then it creates for you a content, but that content is inspired with a lot of other content that might have copyright, and it's a fair question. If you use people intellectual property, well, you're supposed to compensate them, and how you do that. Now, there are some people who are working on technologies for that, but this is completely out of the scope of what I talked about, right? So there are ways to trace, by the way. So a little bit JPEG trust is one of those things that do, but it's none of the AI that is used in JPEG AI or in JPEG Plano point cloud coding is in that category. These are really codecs that they just compact information, and they do not really create content other than what is given to them. Of course, there is copyright also of the input, but usually, well, the problem is not different, right? So even the good old JPEG, 30 plus years, but you're not supposed to manipulate content that you don't have the right to do, right? So it's not very different from any other codec in terms of copyright, but it's definitely not the same AI that is used in generative AI.
Thank you very much, Touradj. And given you mentioned also right now the JPEG AI, there are a couple of questions about this format. One in the question and answer box, and another one was posted on the chat. So I will read both of them because perhaps you can answer to both. The first question is JPEG AI or JPEG DNA for long-term preservation is better than TIFF format for still images. And the second question which was raised about JPEG AI is, can JPEG AI also be used in virtual environments now that file formats such as GLTF and USA are becoming more widespread? What is the difference? Similarities, or am I missing something? So long-term preservation, better JPEG AI or TIFF, and these other file formats, please.
So let me first clarify one thing, because actually both questions, it's good that you ask them at the same time. Both questions talk about file formats. A file format is different from the elementary streams. So a file format is just a container in the sense that it has information about what is the size of the image if you want to display it, or if it's a 3D object, what is its dimensions, how many voxels it has, etc. So the file formats that were mentioned, like TIFF or the Kronos file format, the TLGF these are file format. These are just containers. Now, what you put inside the container, the value of the pixels, and even better, the compressed version of the pixels, the bit stream, the code stream, that's another issue. Now, TIFF is a file format, and the LGF also is the same. These are file formats that are for binary content. So you could probably think about some equivalent quaternary file format, but we are not talking about the same thing. When you say TIFF, inside TIFF, you could put JPEG, you could put JPEG 2000, compressed format, you could put no compressed format, uncompressed, you could put JPEG AI, etc. So we cannot mix them. So one of them is about the elementary stream, the compressed bit stream, the code stream, as they call it. The other one is the container that wraps this and defines what is inside. For example, can you use TIFF for long-term storage? Yeah, well, it's TIFF. TIFF is a container, but it's not the same as the file format, as the coding, which is JPEG DNA, that really turns your information into quaternary, the molecules. Now, the question that was asked about what is the relationship between JPEG AI and all these 3D? Well, JPEG AI is for 2D, but JPEG Plano point cloud coding, which is an extension, you could say, of JPEG AI for 3D point clouds, it can be embedded in any of these formats. So there is really nothing preventing that.
Thank you very much, Touradj. I am a bit mindful of the time, but I would like to take one final question, and then perhaps we can wrap up. So the question, and I hope the answer is not too complex, so it's quick. The question is, do these new formats comply with things like ICC profiling, EPTC, and can they maintain 16-bit data coming from camera raw files?
The short answer is yes. Not only they are compatible with ICC profiles, with colors, not only they can have IPTC, but also all sorts of other metadata embedded in them. But they can actually, some of them can do far more than the 16 or 32-bit per pixel. I actually gave the example of JPEG 2000. The JPEG 2000 can go to 32 bit per pixel per component. JPEG XL goes even more. In fact, can do even floating point. So most of these, JPEG AI can do HDR and more than well beyond 10 or 20 or 24 or 32 bit. So the short answer is yes. So all these things always come with all the formats that JPEG defines.
Thank you very much, Touradj. I think we really must close. For the final greetings, I would like to give the floor for just a minute to David Iglesias Frank from CRDI and the PAG group of the ICA. Please, David, the floor is yours to wrap up.
Thank you, Valentina. And first of all, thank you to Professor Touradj for this so very interesting presentation. Because at Archives, we many times discuss in a very basic level, like would you use TIFF or JPEG, even without the differentiation of JPEG formats, etc. And you said something that is really helpful, and is the key answer of this. It depends on what you want, what functionalities you expect from this format, and what are the resources. So I think we learned that first of all we need to have the right questions before deciding what format to use. And JPEG is amazing. It's all this family of plenty of different formats that we need to understand just a little bit. But there is also another issue that is the software, what the industry provides, because when you are in front of the computer and you need to take decisions, you are limited by the software you use, etc. So anyway, I think it was a very good webinar, and it makes completely sense, this collaboration with Photo Consortium and ICA, because all this information that is shared among the archival community, it's really very, very useful. So thank you very much, and thank you for all the attendees in this webinar. And we hope we'll continue with new series very soon. Thank you.
Thank you,
Goodbye.
everyone. Bye. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye, Touradj. Thank you.